Bulavanaka, welcome to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV. I'm Rita Narayan. Today we have in studio Ms. Ella Tukutukulevu, Assistant Director, Child Services at the Ministry of Social Welfare, Women and Poverty Alleviation. And today we're talking about the Child Services Unit within the Ministry. Welcome to the program, Ella. It's good to have you here once again. Now, firstly, Ella, if we could just begin with you talking about If we could just have you talking about the role of the Child Services Unit within the ministry, what exactly does this unit do?
Thank you, Rita. In the Department of Social Welfare, there are two core functions of the department. One being the Family Services Unit, and the other is Child Services. Now, under the Child Services, we have child protection programs, residential care and probation and juvenile justice programs, and also the unit is the secretariat of the NCCC, or the National Coordinating Committee on Children.
Okay. Now you cover a broad area within the whole area of looking after children. Now, just going through the website, something that stood out was, it says, that the future of Fiji lies in its children, and these children need care and protection, and this is where the Social Welfare Department believes that it's important for everyone to look after children, to keep them safe. And when this is not able to happen, then this is where your department comes in, your unit?
Yeah, that's right, Rita. With the Child Services Unit, we have legislative responsibilities under various acts. One being the Juveniles Act. Now, this act, enshrined in the act, is the powers given to the Director of Social Welfare and down to the field officers, powers to remove children if they are seen to be at risk. For instance, if a case is being reported to us, say of physical abuse, and if the physical abuse is happening in the home, welfare officers, through the assessments, they feel that the child is not safe. So under the Juveniles Act, the child can be removed and probably placed with kinship placements, or otherwise, then we would take them into care.
Okay. Now, what are some of the things that the social welfare officers assess in terms of trying to make a decision whether the child should remain in that situation or be removed?
Basically, in terms of abuse, the welfare officers would actually see if the risk is there. And the risk, when we say risk, we mean the perpetrator. So if a child is being physically abused by his or her parents, and then there seems to be some tension because now the case has reached the authorities, then we would feel if we see that the child would not be safe in that environment, then that would allow the officer to remove the child.
Okay. Now, you're on Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV, and if you have any questions for Ms. Ella Tukutukulevu, you can send us an email on goldfm@fbc.com.fj, and also we're on Facebook on Gold FM Fiji, or you can also call us on 3220-906 or 3220-907. Now, Ella, just going back to that scenario where the social welfare officers are required to assess the situations, just in terms of cases reported recently, what has been the most number of incidences? Have children been removed, or have you been able to place them back with maybe extended family members?
It depends on the nature of cases. Usually, especially when it comes to sexual abuse. So, if sexual abuse, then we would remove children if need be. And then this is where the residential care comes in. We have 9 approved homes across the country. So this is where the children of victims of abuse would be placed after we get a care order from the court. For cases of neglect, sometimes they are placed on with relatives or extended families. But otherwise, placement would really depend on the risk assessment that the welfare officers conduct.
Now, you mentioned that you work with other stakeholders, and you mentioned the police. What are some of the other stakeholders that you work with, and besides, those that run the residential homes?
Our key partners are police and the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education as well, and we have our NGO partners because we have outsourced our counseling to the Empower Pacific. So these are some of the partners that come into play when a child is abused or when a child is removed.
Now, in terms of the role that the public can play, if they feel that there's a possible case where a child is being abused or is neglected, how do they go about reporting this to the different authorities?
We've always encouraged our communities or public out there, if there are cases or if they even suspect that there's some element of abuse happening in the home, they can always visit their welfare officer, the nearest one, or otherwise it's always advisable to go to the police, whichever office is closest to them. Yeah.
And in the Juveniles Act, this is children under the age of 17?
17.
Okay.
Yeah. We are currently reviewing our act, so that we are in line with the international standards. So the age is 18. But if you look at our child welfare decree, this is another piece of legislation that was released in 2010. A child is 18 years and below.
Okay. Now, and if you could talk about some of the other legislative framework that governs the work that the ministry, your department, is doing.
The latest decree is the child welfare decree, and this is one that has been, we find, has been working very well with us. It really has to do with mandatory reporting, and mandatory reporting of certain professionals. In the decree, the professionals are the police, the doctors, lawyers, and welfare officers. And last year, Cabinet had approved the inclusion of teachers as well. So this mandatory reporting to the Permanent Secretary of Social Welfare. Every professional under the decree has a duty. If they suspect of harm or abuse in a child, they must. The forms are available in our website, or otherwise, if they verbally inform the Permanent Secretary, then they would need to follow up with the form as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, this has been in effect since 2010. It was when it first came out. Almost 2.5 years now. What has that been thoroughly followed through in terms of mandatory reporting?
Yes, our partners, especially our key partners, the Ministry of Health, they have been making use of this form. They have been referring, as well as the police. Teachers, because they recently included, we hardly receive any referrals from them, except word by mouth. But the Ministry of Health and police have been using the forms.
Okay. Thank you, Ella. We'll take a short break now and we'll come back to the discussions in a moment. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV, and I'm Rita Narayan, and once again our studio guest today is Ms. Ella Tukutukulevu, of Assistant Director Child Services at the Ministry of Social Welfare, and we're talking about the Child Services Unit within the ministry and its role. Now, Ella, before we went to the break, we were talking about the Child Welfare Decree of 2010, and one of the aspects of it that you mentioned was mandatory reporting. Now, what about and you talked about, the professionals, their duty to report. The whole issue of confidentiality. What does the decree spell out about confidentiality?
I think the portion on confidentiality is really to do with the details of the case. and the professionals, which is why the decree is limited to certain professionals. And each professional would know if there is a breach of confidentiality. But the important issue is to have the case reported. The details and the breakdown of the case would be at the that would be the welfare officer's role. The form basically just spells out in brief what the abuse is, the nature of cases. But the details would be with the Ministry of Health or whoever the first professional receives it, and the details would also be shared, or with the welfare officers when they carry out the assessments.
Thank you. You're listening to Speak Your Mind, and if you have any questions for Ms. Tukutukulevu, you could either call us on 3220906 or 3220907, or also email us questions on goldfm@fbc.com.fj, and we're also on Facebook on Gold FM Fiji. Now, the decree also spells out, failure to report, and then that it is an offence.
Yes, the decree for officers who fail to perform that duty, and if it comes to the attention of the permanent secretary, then he has powers under the decree to charge a professional for failure of reporting.
But what I also read in the decree is that it actually binds the state to take action, to do something.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ella. Now, talk about some of the other legislative frameworks that govern the work that your unit is doing. You mentioned the Juveniles Act, and now the Child Welfare Decree is the recent one. You also have others like the Adoption Act.
Yes, we have the Adoption of Infant Act. We also have Probation Act and Community Work Act. Just briefly on the Adoption Act, like I said, these are pieces of legislations which are currently under review. But otherwise, under the Adoption of Infant Act, this has to do with local adoptions. In the Act, it spells out criteria of those who are eligible to adopt and what they can do, the processes. So very simply, the Act says that one who is eligible to adopt, if adoptive parents, those who are willing to adopt, have a child or have identified a child and is looking after a child for, say, more than 3 months. So if they meet that condition, then they're eligible to file for an adoption in the family court.
Yeah. Okay. And the Community Work Act?
The Community Work Act and the Probation Act really, that has to do with our young juveniles coming in contact with the law. So if the court releases them on probation, the welfare officers, they become the probation officers. So they would supervise. These are non-custodial sentences. Because of the age of the juvenile, they will not be able to get prison terms. So instead, there are provisions for community work. They can, work out there in the community for, say, 60 hours or so. And after completion, then they are released to go. Or otherwise, if a juvenile has committed a minor offense and the court feels that we cannot detain this person, then they would be released on probation. So this is where welfare officers, they become their supervisors, and they would monitor the juveniles while they are out on probation.
Now, what sort of community work would these juveniles be involved in the whole area of rehabilitating them so that they don't reoffend or go into doing something more serious?
It's very simply, just cleaning around the community hall or maybe the school, just a bit of cleanup outside or inside, anything that they need to give back to the community, any sort of work that they will be able to be monitored closely by community volunteers. We also would, we would engage volunteers. Say, for instance, if a juvenile is released on probation and this person is in Kandavu, so we would engage the Turangani Koro to monitor the child for us. So it would require the child coming in at certain times. So there are conditions set on community work as well, until they complete their so many hours that the court has sentenced them to.
And how would you describe the support of the community in such situations? I mean, in some of the cases that you've reported, the community support in terms of rehabilitating a juvenile offender. For example, if you had to send them back to the community and you've had the probation officer, but also in terms of the community supporting the rehabilitation of the juvenile offender. Has it been a pretty favorable response?
Yes, favorable, because before the court actually sentences a child to community work or releases the child on probation, there's something called the pre-sentencing reporting. Sometimes this is a requirement by the court from the social welfare. So, for instance, if a child breaks into, and just takes a wheelbarrow, say for instance, the welfare officer would be expected to assess, to go out and get the views of the communities, whether he or she is a threat to the community, and if we get consensus, opinion that no, it's not a threat, then this is what we would report back to court, and then we will also gather opinions from the community on ways in which we can, whether he or she will be really received by the community.
Okay, thank you very much, Ella. We'll take a short break and be back in a moment. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV. I'm Rita Naran, and our studio guest today is Ella Tukutukulevu of the Social Welfare Ministry, and we're talking about the Child Services Unit and the Child Protection Services that fall within the jurisdiction of the Social Welfare Ministry. Now, and if we could talk about some of the community programs that your unit conducts.
Thank you. We have community project officers in every division, and they are the ones tasked to conduct community awareness. So they would go out to the communities. Last year we launched a package, and it's called the Children a Precious Gift from God Facilitation Package. This is strength-based, and this is what our officers take out to communities. It targets parents and communities as well. So there are numerous. They have their own programs. Sometimes it's an area workshop. Sometimes it's village, village by village, and also sometimes it's depending on the demands from the villages.
Now, one of the areas of concern, particularly that the police and other stakeholders have highlighted, is the area of neglect of children, and there have been some very unfortunate cases where children have perished, for instance, house fires, or children accidentally bumped by vehicles. What sort of awareness are you creating amongst parents and members of the community to just reinforce this whole idea of children need supervision?
Yeah, when we are out in the community and when we are speaking to parents, we just want to, we are always emphasizing on parents taking responsibility, to be responsible over their children. For instance, wherever they are, they need to know that there's a safety net for their child. So if they are in a gathering in the village, they need to be asking themselves if their child is safe, where is the child at that time. Because as you mentioned, there are cases where it's just pure negligence by the parents. But we are always encouraging them, to be more vigilant in supervising their children. So if there are, danger zones, they should be aware of their danger zones around their home, around their community, or wherever that they take their children to. they should be always be aware of danger zones, so that this is where they need to, to really supervise.
And are you able to sort of highlight some of these danger zones?
For instance, in most village setups, the playing ground, the playground is near the sea or is near a drain, and then children, or near the road, by the roadside, and then children are left unsupervised. So this is very simple, this is where simple accidents happen. Children drown, children fall into the, ditch, and they drown and hurt themselves. Some run carelessly onto the road and, cause accidents. Also in big gatherings, especially in the night. So because of the cases that we are receiving, the influx of sexual abuse, so we are always talking to parents, to mothers especially, to be more, careful with their children, especially if they are grown. They need to know where their children are all the time, because in big gatherings sometimes we are so focused on cooking, looking after others, we forget that our children fall out, and later when things happen, then we regret. So there are many danger zones that. So when our community project officers go out to the communities, these are the points that they they discuss with parents. That they do mapping, that they map their community, that they know which is safe and which is not so safe for children.
Mm-hmm. And what about the message for the children themselves?
Yeah, I know that with the children's rights, we have received feedback from parents where they say that now children are taking more. They feel that they are more powerful with their rights, but we are always also telling them that the rights comes with responsibilities. If they need to go to school, it's the parents' responsibility to provide whatever that is needed: uniforms, school fees. It is their responsibility to take themselves to school. Yeah, and when it comes to probably substance abuse, that is something that we really need to touch from grassroots. Really advise them on. So we just speak to them on the risk factors that can be, can result from indulging in such, especially for substance abuse.
Okay. Thank you, Ella. You're on Speak Your Mind. And if you have any questions for Ms. Ella Tukutukulevu, the Assistant Director of Child Services at the Ministry of Social Welfare, you can email us on goldfm@fbc.com.fj. And we're also on Facebook on Gold FM Fiji. Or you can also call us on 3220-906 or 3220-907. Now, Ella, if you could talk about the residential homes that fall under the state jurisdiction that you take care of. You mentioned that there were 9. Roughly how many children do we have in these homes?
There is a total of 124 children in all the 9 homes. The homes, they are called, we say that they are approved homes because they have met the minimum standards of residential care. Children needing care and protection, those are in need of care and protection. Those who are abused and need protection, these are the children that are kept in the residential care.
Mm-hmm. And there are very strict requirements before these homes are designated residential homes?
Yes, there are 9 minimum standards that those who feel that they want to set up homes, they need to meet. So the standards are basically on security, on the safety, the environment. So they need to meet these requirements before they are approved.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, perhaps if we could talk about the child care and protection allowance for children. We are aware that this is there's been some change to this. It's been increased by the government.
Thank you, Rita. And the increase in the care and protection allowance, this is particularly for those children in residential care. The program on care and protection allowance There are also children on kinship placements or those that have been looked after by their grandparents but do not live in the home. These are the ones that continue to receive the minimal. But for our children in residential care, they have an increase in allowance of from 60 to 100. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good note to end this segment, and we'll be back in a moment with more on this discussion. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV. I'm Rita Narayan, and in studio with me is Ella Tukutukulevu of the Social Welfare Ministry, and she's particularly responsible for the Child Services Unit within the ministry. Now, Ella, before we went to the break, you were talking about the increase in allowances for children in residential homes who are under the care of the state, and you mentioned that there was an increase from $60 to $100.
Yes, thank you, Rita. For many years now, the children that are placed under the care of the director in residential homes have been receiving $60. And we found that for feedback from the caregivers or the residential homes that this was not enough, because the $60 basically would have to cover all of their needs, from education to their food, to any other needs that they have. So there was a proposal made to increase. So now that we have received the approval from $60 to $100, perhaps that would cover some of the costs that all the difficulties that residential homes used to go through with the mere allowance that we were giving them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that has become effective immediately?
Yes.
Okay.
That's been effective.
Thank you. Now, let's go back to the Adoption Act. Can we walk us through the process of adoption? What are people required to follow?
Thank you. When we take out awarenesses in communities, we find, especially with our Itoke, they look after children. We look after children, and we say that the children are now ours, or this is our child. But legally, the child still belongs to natural parents. So our advice is, if there are children that you are looking after, and in lieu of adoption, you want to, legally adopt, most questions that or queries that arise from the community is, what do we do? Where do we go? If there is interfamily adoption, so if you are looking after sister's child, sister's daughter, and this child is now yours, say you have been looking after a child from when she was 6 months old. Now the child is 5 years old. And if you have not gone through the adoption process, then the child biologically still, or legally, still belongs to the natural mother. So what we can do is, so for those of us who are in that situation, one of the conditions from the courts is that when you file for adoption, the child has to be registered under his or her natural mother, parents. So the birth certificate of the child. So the child has to be registered under natural mother. Another requirement is the marriage certificate of the applicants, the adoptive parents, those the couple that wants to adopt. So this is filed in the family court. When we file in the family court, then the court would order or appoint social welfare to be the guardian ad litem. And also at the same time, we would be ordered to compile the adoption report. When that is done, when the first call in court, the couple would be advised to visit social welfare, and then this is where interviews and visitations would take place. Yeah.
And how long is the process usually? Does it take very long? Or?
For the adoption, or any case for that matter in court, it really depends on the court dates. So if a court date is given by the court, then we need to meet that court date. With interfamily adoption, doesn't take much time, so maybe 2 weeks, to complete visitations and compilation of the report. And the welfare officers would visit the home where the child is and look at her space or his space, bed space, if there's places for leisure, etc. We would be, when the report is compiled, it would be in the best interest of the child. So if the welfare officer is convinced that the adoption is in the best interest, this is reflected in the report, and it also helps the court to make decisions from there on. Yeah.
Now, the point about interfamily adoption, and that's quite prevalent here. Now, how is it going to be mandatory to apply for adoption for families in that situation, or is it left to their it's up to them whether they want to do that or not? Or is that something that's being looked at?
It depends if the carers, if they want to legally, adopt the child, because when a child is legally adopted, then everything that belongs to you will probably be willed to the child. Or sometimes we are just looking after the child, but the child has no rights over, properties or things like that. Which is why we are always encouraging couples, if they feel or if that is their motive, for the child to be registered under, like their matangali or so forth, then they need to go through legal adoption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And what has been the public's response been like to that whole message that you're taking out to the communities?
I think in most communities, many people do not know what to do and where to go. So when we take out that bit of awareness, it's well received. I remember back in the Northern Division some years back when we were asked to speak at one of the churches. And when we spoke on adoption, then there was an influx of people going into court because, to their thinking, we have been providing everything for this child from the time he or she was born. So this child is ours. But when it comes to, properties and things like that, they lose out because the child is not legally, registered under them. So the response has been positive. Yeah.
So for as far as you're concerned, it's a matter of creating awareness within members of the community.
Yes.
Weighing the pros and cons of not having a child adopted as well as having one adopted.
Because many times people come and say that we've looked after this child. This is our daughter, and then sometimes natural parents turn up, and then when the natural parents want to take the child, say, but we have been looking after this child. So this is in situations like that. This is when we encourage people. If you think you're taking care of a child and you want to, you call the child yours, and you want to, you need to legalize the relationship. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ella. A very interesting point to bring this discussion to a short break, and we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and FBC TV. I'm Rita Naran, and once again our studio guest is Ms. Ella Tukutukulevu, Assistant Director Child Services at the Ministry of Social Welfare. Now, Ella, before we went to the break, we were talking about the adoption processes, and we've also discussed the Act is under review. Now, at what stage are we now in terms of the review process for the Adoption Act?
All our legislations that are under review is being vetted by the Office of the Solicitor General. So we are just waiting on them to complete that phase before before they give us the final one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, in terms of the residential homes that are being operated by NGOs, you talked about the child care and protection allowance. Are there any other ways that they can source funding from the government to be able to run these homes, to look after these children under their care?
Thank you. The department also has provisions for NGO grants, and this is open to NGOs that deal directly with children. So we are always encouraging our residential homes, especially, to apply for these funds. And the funds is really to for the maintenance of the home, which is why, because the grants that they get was for the homes, for the extension of the homes. The $60 that we were giving was not enough. This is why we have increased. We've asked for an increase for can protection allowance. But the grants, yes, it's available for groups that deal directly with children.
Yeah. And how are they able to apply?
There are forms, these application forms that's available in all welfare offices. So they can, and there are certain requirements in the form that they need to meet before applying for the grants.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ella, before we end this show, what is the most important message that you would like to give to the members of the community who are listening in or watching this program?
From the Child Services Unit right now, and under the Child Welfare Decree, it's overwhelming to receive cases almost every day. I think highest on the list is sexual abuse. It's like to advise our parents to be very, like I said, to be very vigilant on the supervision of their children, to be able to note the difference in a child. We all know our children, and we all know when a child goes through, changes. So take time to listen to them, spend time with them as well, so that we're able to know what is happening. And with the technologies, recent technologies that we have, these are some of the causes, factors of abuse happening. There's high number of sexual abuse and teenage pregnancies as well. So I'd like to encourage our parents to be very, keep that very protective eye over your child. Not only girls, boys as well. I think there's also high incidence of malnutrition cases. Giving the right food and feeding them well, to avoid all these kind of cases happening. There's a lot of neglect, especially in our rural areas, also in the urban areas, where children are supposed to be in school, but they are just left to loiter around the place. If we can be responsible, be more responsible in taking care of our children and providing for them as well, because that is our responsibility. Rights are there, and rights comes with responsibility. So as a parent, your responsibility is to provide for your child and to see that the child achieves his or her goal.
And just very quickly, are you able to just sort of point out some of the initial telltale signs that things might not be right with children? What can parents particularly observe that should get them to start thinking?
Sometimes it's your child's body language. Sometimes it's your, how your child begins to behave. It's more conscious of his or her looks. Does things very cautiously. We know our child. Like I said, you know your own child, and you will know that, oh no, this is my child, and now this is her. So, when you receive red signs or signals, this is a time where you sit and you speak to them. Sometimes, because of our traditions, children are meant to listen. But with what is happening around us, I believe that it's more advisable to spend time to listen to them. Many cases we receive, and when we ask the children, why didn't you tell mom about it, or why didn't you tell somebody? Oh no, I tried telling, but they wouldn't listen. So when things happen, then we regret. So I guess the advice from the unit is, children are a precious gift from God, and we need to take care of them. We need to see that we need to nurture them in a way so that their life is not shortened. Yeah, this is why a lot of abuse is happening when we fail to also see that provide that safety net for them. Many cases as well. Some cases where children are just left and parents are not at home, so they're a child left to supervise the younger siblings. Yeah, sometimes in the day, while parents are out, children are left to supervise younger siblings, which is why they are not in school. Yeah, some cases of neglect, children being sent to school, but they're sent with no lunch, and that is going to affect their development. So if it's 3 times in a week, then the teacher needs to be, teacher is concerned about it, and then this needs to be addressed as well. So when we receive such cases, if 3 days in the week the child does not take lunch, or the child comes with dirty uniform, there must be something must be really wrong at home. So this is when welfare officers step in and investigate, and then come down to the root of the problem. Yeah. Or when children are on the streets, sometimes we receive callers, receive calls from shop owners. There's a mother and child here begging, and this is exploiting children to abuse. So this is when we step in as well, and on the strength of the Juveniles Act, this is where we act to remove children from the streets and see that they are taken care of.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ella, for taking time to be with us on the program today. And until next week, I'm Rita Narayan on Speak Your Mind. Goodbye.